Hello and welcome to Sarcastic Reviews. For more reviews, go to www.sarcastedreviews.com. Today we're going to be talking about Iron Fist, Marvel's Iron Fist that was just released on Netflix on Friday, March 17th. I've binge watched the entire series, and I have to say that it is actually disappointing. Not disappointing as in bad, but disappointing as in not as good as the other ones. And I thought it would be better based on just the whole martial arts aspect, especially considering what they did with Daredevil and the fighting in that. I thought this would be better. I thought it would be good, at least, but there are some definitely issues with it. For one thing, the way the action is directed is not very good. Going through it, you can see uh, times when you can see obvious body doubles in fight scenes that is kind of an embarrassment at this time in at this age to see that, where you can see obvious wigs being used to replace characters that are starring in the show. And as far as the main character, Finn Jones, his fight scenes aren't that impressive. They're not that good. As an actor, he's good, but his character isn't. For one thing, he's more annoying than anything else. Like, you would think that, given the backstory of somebody that was lost when he was 10 and goes to this it's another dimension. They don't really mention that in the show, but it is an other dimension where it's a land called Kung Lung, which other people in the movie or in the show compare it to heaven. And he being there, he's an outsider, but being an outsider, they still teach him the martial arts and go on to let him participate in the trials to become Iron Fist, which he joins and he wins and he becomes Iron Fist. But then he leaves because he wants to go back home, which he can only do every 15 years. They mention that in the show. So he shows up 15 years after he's supposed to be dead. And there's surprisingly very little fish out of water moments that you would see from somebody who's been away from civilization for 15 years. And I was really surprised by that, considering he's got all the same mannerisms, and he's not surprised by anything as far as technology goes, as far as what's going on in the world. He just joins in and becomes a part of it, and it's really surprising. You'd think somebody who's been lost in some other dimension for 15 years and went there when they were 10 would have all these moments where they were surprised by what's going on in the world, but in this case it doesn't happen, and that was a surprise. And as far as Finn Jones, the actor who plays Danny Rand, he does a good job, but the character itself is not written very well, as far as I can tell. There are moments where he'll be really angry, and shaking to the point where you think he's gonna blow up, and then he goes on and starts talking about how he spent all these years being trained and how to be disciplined, but he never shows what he talks about. He never shows all that much discipline. So it's really surprising to see him constantly brag about it, and that's part of what makes him not that likable as a character. Like, he brags constantly about all his training and that, and you see him in the beginning fighting to have his name be his name. Like, he has no way of proving who he is, so he's fighting with the other people who are now running the company that his dad used to run, and those are the Meachums. And it's a brother and sister team. Jessica Stroup plays Joy Meacham. Tom Pelfrey plays Ward Meacham, and they're both very good characters. They're actually way more interesting than Danny Rand is, as is Colleen Wing, played by Jessica Henwick. Her fight scenes are way more entertaining than Danny Rand's fight scenes, which is disappointing again, because you would think the main character would have the best fights, the more action and be able to actually hold his own when it looks like he can't. Even though he does, like, the Iron Fist is basically almost mystical, mystical superpower that allows him to turn his fist into iron and gives him all this extra strength and everything. But when he's not calling it, which isn't very often, he really seems like he could get his butt kicked anytime. And I was just surprised at how well the other characters did. Like, Colleen Wing, that character is, I'd rather see a show about her than a show about Danny Rand, based on what I've seen. And you can tell the other characters, they just have way more to do. They have more. They're more complex. They're like, Danny Rand is just, he wants to know what happened to his parents, and that's pretty much it. It's really by the numbers, his character. But the others are good. They're just not good enough to make the show great. I wish they were. It would be much more entertaining. The villains, it's a whole season, so there are multiple villains. But, and I'm not spoiling anything that wasn't already in the commercials for it, but Harold Meacham is one of the main villains. And he's played by David Wenham, who you may know from 300, as the narrator character. And he is actually really good as a villain, like, very complicated, very entertaining. There's guys that show up halfway through the season that are more entertaining. There's a Davos character who's like a friend of Danny's from the other dimension who shows up, and he's more fun, he's more interesting. There's even one character that just shows up in one episode. He's a drunk guard who fights Danny for access to a building, and he's just defending the building. And he's one of the most entertaining characters in the entire season, really, and he barely has any screen time. But he is so much better than Danny Rand's character is, and that's really the fall of the show. Is just the main character is not that good. Not the actor. The actor is good. It's just the way the main character is written to be annoying more than anything, as far as I can see. And as far as the controversy goes, that this character should be Asian because they're a master of martial arts. If you watch the show, or if you even pay any attention to the comics, you know that that's not what the character is about. It's about being an outsider in this other dimension and then learning the martial arts despite not being welcome and being treated like he doesn't belong. And it really, if you watch the show, that part fits in. So anybody who thinks that should be played by an Asian character doesn't know the story, doesn't know anything really about it. Just because they know martial arts doesn't mean they have to be Asian. Like, that's a stereotype that doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why people are so up in arms about that. But as far as the show goes, it's good. It's not great. It's not as good as the others. Like, even as far as I would go, I would rate them Daredevil and Luke Cage, and then Jessica Jones, and then Iron Fist. And it would be, Iron Fist isn't a close fourth. It's more like, I'm sure as soon as Punisher comes out, that's going to be higher rated than Iron Fist in my rating anyway. Rosario Dawson does show up. She's in about a little less than half the season, so she's a good character too. And it is just a bunch of good characters who are better than the main character. And as far as the directing goes, there are fight scenes they're really cut quickly, which, when you see that, you usually know that the fighting wasn't that good. It wasn't choreographed good enough, so they had to cut around it to make it look good. Or it's one of those directors who thinks that all these quick cuts, which are unnecessary, are bringing more adrenaline and more action to the scene, when really they're not. They're more annoying than anything else. And one of the scenes is so far all these Marvel shows have had the hallway fight scene where you see the characters fighting in the hallway. They go through a gauntlet basically of the bad guys, and in the other shows it's been this long drawn out fight scene, which usually a one shot or maybe two or three shots, but it's not cut to crap like this one is in Iron Fist. And it's really the whole point of the long shot is to show that all the choreography that's gone into this really great scene, and you're taking that away with quick cuts. Same with the feeling of going along with this character on this huge fight and seeing him get tired and tired as more and more tired as the fight goes on, and you lose that with those quick cuts. So I don't know why the director chose that, because it really takes away from that whole idea of that hallway fight scene. There's some scenes you can see where they kind of set it up, and if they would have held the shot, it would have been great, but they just cut away so fast. It almost makes you feel like maybe the martial arts wasn't as good as in something like Daredevil, so they had to cut around it to hide it. And that's really disappointing. So I would say Iron Fist, it's a Netflix original, and I would rate it a 6 out of 10. It's worth the watch, but definitely don't rush to see it. Don't, you could even watch a little bit at a time. If you're not interested, don't watch it. I mean, the secondary characters are worth it, but if you're looking for it to set up the Iron Fist character for the later on shows like the Defenders, it's not worth it. Like, you get way more out of the other characters than you ever do out of Danny Rand and the Iron Fist character. So thank you for listening and watching, and if you're interested in more reviews, go to www.sarcastedreviews.com. Thank you.